Tell me when we're live.
We're live.
We're live. We're
We're
back.
live when you said that.
Hi, Toben. We're here. We're doing it.
Okay, Jonathan, I am so excited to hear about when you went to a freaking monastery here in the Christmas or just after Christmas, I suppose.
I love that we're like being kind of off recording for like a month or so, and then we just like come back with like my trip from the monastery. It's like,
Yeah,
whoa,
we're bringing the good stuff now,
yeah,
at the very least.
the juicy stuff. But yeah, December was pretty wild. Like I think I was very I was very sick most of December. So
Yeah,
this is a
maybe we
pre.
should start there. You've really been sick now for a while. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So December was like I think it was just it was wild. Like I think there was a lot of sickness around Denmark, but I can't remember in my life like being sick for that long. I'd come better, and then I'd just be like another week of getting smashed with some other kind of virus or something.
Yeah, it's not really supposed to work like that, is it? You always get like one virus and then it's kind of gone and then you're fine for a while.
Yeah. And you were saying something actually to him, and you were like,
yeah,
you thought that was kind of like somehow preparing me for this trip, this pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And
you were saying like you were going to the monastery on the 26th, right?
Yeah.
And then you've been sick for a while and you kept getting sick. And I've experienced before that illness became a deepening of my spiritual practice. I actually had experienced that, I think, a month before before that happened to you. And so I was like, you're probably getting like cleansed for your trip.
Well, maybe that's it's interesting because like on the trip I was also sick. So it was like maybe that was like helping with the the spiritual experience. But yeah, so I went to Greece. I decided to take this trip for myself, and so the place is called Mount Athos. It's they call it the holy mountain, and basically it's this kind of very remote place in Greece, super hard to get to. You've got to get like a permit to get in. There's like,
oh damn,
yeah, it's a pretty wild place. Like they say it's like people have been living this like the same way for like the last 1,000 years, kind of thing. Although I would say they do have electricity, you know.
Yeah, okay.
So and you can still use your phone and stuff. But yeah, it was an extraordinary experience. I would love to share what happened, what went down, and just the whole, this whole kind of pilgrimage walk. And for folks like listening in who don't know what a pilgrimage is, basically it's a walk, but in a quite a spiritual way, and usually you stop at different churches or monasteries along the way. So I think a famous walk is like a pilgrimage is like the Camino de Compostela,
which you also walked
in Spain. Yeah, that's how I met my wife.
Yeah.
And this one in Greece is kind of like a little bit more wild and like in the mountain kind of thing. Also along the coastline. And there was like 20 different monasteries, and you can basically stay at any of them as long as you let them know. And it's like a bunch of monks living in these monasteries, kind of like dedicating their lives to God, and like a lot of prayer and things like that. And yeah, but where do we start? To? And I think we start with like maybe getting to the trip itself. And what do you
Can I just say that it's super interesting that it's so far away, and it reminds me of in the in Asia, where these Zen masters would go off in a place where it was almost impossible to get to, so that only the most dedicated actually made it there. Because those who weren't dedicated, they would already be filtered out because they just wouldn't take the trip.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's pretty much this place, right? Like, even to get a permit, they only allow 10 non-Greek Orthodox people in each day. So,
damn.
on the mountain at any one time, there's only like a handful of, yeah, people
They
like,
protect the energy, maybe.
yeah, and I think they also just don't have the capacity to have more people stay. Because also the hospitality in these monasteries is like you don't pay for anything. They
Oh,
just they host you and feed you and give you an opening to come to the church and pray with them. And basically they share like their spirituality and experience of that, all like kind of with an open heart. Like they don't ask for anything in return, which is really interesting, I think.
okay. So starting from the beginning, I think everyone is curious about why did you choose to go on the trip?
Why did I choose?
Why did you want to go to the trip in the first place?
That's a good question. I think it came about from different reasons. There was, I think, the main kind of reason, or the main thing was just like this strong feeling to kind of experience, maybe like a spiritual deepening in a way where, and of course I can experience that here. And I'm not sure, like, for you listening in, but sometimes for me, it helps just to get out of my normal day to day and into something that's just like completely foreign, and where nobody knows me, has no context, where I'm not with my wife or kids or anything, and I can just kind of be there in whatever that is, and so that's, for me, it was like going on this trip was something I wanted to do for myself, and do for the spiritual part of myself, you could call that. And I think I just needed that at that time. And to be honest, I could just stay on like a constant pilgrimage for a long time.
Yeah.
Just live in these monasteries, walking around, and yeah. But anyway, it's important to also come home. So yeah, so that's one kind of part of it, and then another part of it is, I've got another baby on the way in
Yeah.
at the end of this month, and it was a way of kind of preparing for that next stage of life.
That's a beautiful thing, I think, to like take the retreat and deepen yourself and get ready for new phase or stage of life.
Yeah, and I think like in some way, people might, and I in my mind also said this at certain times, like it's selfish to do that, to like to leave my wife and kids and do and just and at that time of the year as well. And at the other end of that, I was like, you know what, like, no, this is something important to me, and I know I know myself enough to be aware that going on this trip for me, that would give me a lot of energy and, in Danish, overskud, for this next kind of thing coming back. So I just did it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we call that selfish, but I think our ability to be anything for other people depends on us taking care of ourselves in this way, doing things for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I know your wife goes on retreats as well with like yoga and stuff. So it's like you give each other space. To do things.
Yeah.
And I think in Denmark, it's such a funny idea of selfishness, because I think that's not really selfishness. That's just like you talked about before we start, like filling your own cup. I think that's so important for everyone in your life. Like you do it as much for them as you do it for yourself, because you can't be anything for them if you're just running on fumes and you're empty.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like kind of like self fullness, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But either way, like it filled my like spirit a lot. Like as a teaser, like I think like at the last day, I was completely shattered physically and like just super tired from getting up to do prayers at like 1 o'clock in the morning,
Damn.
and I'd been walking for like days, and they don't eat much and stuff, and you can't like just get food there. It's like, well, you can, but like anyway, so I was completely shattered, and I was just like gone. And at the same time, like my spirit was like full of energy. Like my like spirit was like so recharged and so like close to God that I was just like I could, there was so much energy there, and that was really yeah, something. So yeah, but we'll start from the start. So
Yeah. Tell us this. Tell us the start of the journey.
yeah, so the first thing is like getting a permit. So you got to like kind of apply for this permit, and then they granted this, yeah, so I could go in. And just as like there's an interesting rule they have to it, and that is like for the last 1,000 years there hasn't been one female on this part of in Greece, in Mount Athos. It's a very like, yeah, it's pretty extreme in today's society to say, okay, you can't actually come here as a female, but they've got their own like law and stuff.
Yeah.
And so you literally, I literally couldn't have invited my wife even if she wanted to come.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, so, and I thought that was a bit interesting in the beginning, and then actually living there for a few days, I was like, okay, I can kind of see where this is coming from.
Yeah.
In an interesting way.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that already sounds very interesting.
Yeah. So so the first thing is getting the permit, and then it's like it was pretty much impossible to find all the stuff online to even get there. So in some way, I was already like kind of like trying to research like what are all like the logistics. And then eventually I just kind of gave up, and I was like, I'm just going to trust when I get there.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's cool. That's the way a pilgrimage should be.
Yeah. So, and I didn't know anyone going there as well, by the way. So it's just kind of like also opening up to that faith of just, that I'll meet people and find the path, find the way. And I think that was like kind of what kept coming up in the whole trip, and still now, is like finding the path and being on the path. But first, kind of like, where is the path, and finding that, and walking that path.
Maybe there is nothing apart from the path.
Yeah, exactly. I like it. And that was actually the advice from one of the monks. I'll come back to a more deeper conversation with this monk, but that was actually the advice from him, was to, before you start praying or doing any of this kind of stuff or chanting, or he's like, first find out that God is true and ask him to reveal the path. Ask him to show you the path.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, whoa, okay, like that's so you're just starting there, and it's just interesting because we often talk about like, I'll see you on the trail and I'll see you on the path, like the spiritual path. And I was like constantly reminded of that. I was like, wow, like that's whichever path you're on, it's like, okay, there is a path, and it's the way, and it's like
the way,
finding that, and
the great way.
And that's what I set out myself doing. So so I arrived in Greece, and it was just like real culture shock, like just straight up culture shock. It's like, wow, this is not like Denmark at all. And yeah, so I arrived in a place called Thessaloniki, which is
But
like
you're half Greek, right, or something?
yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good precursor. I've also like got Greek roots, just to
Mm.
put that out there. So yeah, my Greek grandparents are also Orthodox, and things like that. So it was also just kind of to get to know what like their religion as well,
Or the roots.
the roots. Yeah, yeah. So arrived in this city called Thessaloniki, and it's just like this city that's like bustling, kind of very Greek culture, and you walk around and it's like um, there's like like relics and ruins of like the old Greece just like everywhere, and it's kind of like where Aristotle kind of
He was
lived,
thinking
and yeah, exactly where he was thinking. And so pretty significant place.
Aristotle is the name of my girlfriend's cat, by the way.
Really,
Yeah.
wow, I like it. It's nice. Yeah, so arrived there and it was just like already like, well, okay, this is different. And then or finally found out how on earth to get to this place after missing a bunch of buses, and then finding out that I had to like kind of go the next day. But that was all right. So then took a long bus ride and ended up at this port. It's called Orinopoly, and then from there you can take a ferry to Mount Athos, and that's where you get like the permit certificate thing, and then you've got to hold that with you everywhere you go to show you like that you're allowed to be on that part of the island or that part of Greece. Yeah, so I was pretty like blurry eyed and just like, where am I, kind of thing, and then sailing across the Adriatic Sea to Mount Athos. That in itself was just like kind of mystical, just like really early in the morning, like the sun rising, and just like, wow, okay,
That sounds awesome.
yeah. And then
All inspiring.
yeah, it was magic. And then like kind of when I started to see like these first kind of monasteries as we we're sailing along the coastline there, I was just like, wow, like this place, this is something else. Like, and these monasteries have been kind of like built and rebuilt since like 950 AD. So it's like a pretty significant like religious, like Christianity religious place on the earth. And each monastery has their own like relics from different saints and different past time. And like there's even one monastery that has like I can't say supposedly because they say it's the legitimate, but like they have a part of the original cross, like part of the wood that they've kind of like preserved.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And people go there from like all over the world to kind of see these relics and stuff like that. But anyway, so like I was like, yeah, sailing in the morning to get there, and then arrived at this port town, and then from there I was just like, okay, I'm gonna start walking. Just like didn't even know which direction to go in. And then it was like that was like the first moment I actually saw or met one of these monks, and they're kind of dressed all in black, and then they've got like this kind of top hat kind of thing. Kind of looks pretty Egyptian. And later I actually found out that it's maybe because the some of the original like fathers of the Orthodox Christianity were coming from Egypt. Like they call them the fathers, but like the original fathers, and they like left Egypt and went to Greece and basically spread Christianity to Greece. So I think there's like a link between that.
Exciting.
Yeah. So am I doing too much like explaining of like, are we going to get into the?
No, it's great.
I feel like it's important to like paint a picture kind of thing, and
well,
that's what I'm doing. We'll get into some juicy stuff in a sec, but yeah, so like, and then just like starting this pilgrimage walk, like just like literally just heading in one direction to where I thought was the monastery that I would be staying in. But it was really tricky because I didn't really speak much Greek, so I could just kind of like try and guess and try and kind of communicate with these monks of like where to go and stuff. But so I found out that was okay. So, and then yeah, just literally just started walking into the mountains, and it was just like, yeah, it was like this kind of feeling of like, wow, fuck, I'm here and I'm just like a world away from home, and here I am just kind of like starting this journey and this
Did it feel like an adventure when you just went into those mountains on?
Huge adventure. It reminded me of like my kind of traveling days where I just chuck a backpack on and travel to like different parts of the world, but not really knowing much about it. I just kind of show up and then open myself to that experience, and it was just like that in itself was just pretty magical, and I love doing that. I really love like that gives so much kind of like energy and so much excitement, I guess you could say, because it is like that adventure of not knowing and just kind of going with it. So yeah, and it was like coming from Denmark, it was like super cold, and then like arrived there and it was just like sun was shining, and it was just like, whoa, like not only is my spirit filling up right now, but like I'm also just like thawing out. Yeah, and so I just started walking into the mountains, and then after a few hours I arrived at this craziest like place. It's literally, I sent you a photo earlier, but it's like literally the most unbelievable like building. Reminded me of like, and this was like the first monastery I'm kind of like visiting, you could say, literally like built into the mountain on this rock. Like you would say like it's like a feat of unbelievable architecture. And actually walking into this building, it was just like this kind of grandness and this kind of, it was like godly in a way. It was like kind of like just standing up tall, like just wow, like really awe-inspiring.
It's this mountain. It's a monastery that sits on top of a cliff overlooking the coast. It's pretty impressive looking.
Like fucking crazy impressive. I was just like looking at this, wow, like what is this place? And walked into the gates into the monastery, and in each monastery, like there's a church in the middle where the monks do they're praying, and everyone congregates like at different times of the day, and then at other times of the day people just kind of like chilling around or sleeping and stuff. So, but I struck up a conversation with two monks there, and just kind of was just talking with them and stuff, and it's like the first thing they do is like, do you want to sleep here? Do you want to come and kind of like, so there's like they're all about hospitality and about like kind of inviting you, even if you're not Orthodox, like to kind of come and experience their monastery or stay with them. And
is it like a genuine kind of thing, or is it like does it feel like, is it like something they have to do? What did it feel like? Was it like they're
like, whether it's a custom or whether it's a
hospitality? Yeah, was it like in them, or was it just a thing, or what did it feel like?
Yeah, bit of both. Like for some of the monks, like it's their kind of role, you could say, or their job. I don't know if it's if you call it a job, but the way I found out it works is that each monk is assigned in that monastery is assigned a different kind of task for that year. So
wow.
So for example,
really deep.
What's that?
Then you can really go deep into your task.
Yeah, like you just literally get that one. So for example, like some monks I would speak with are like, then they were the cook for 1 year, and like this one monk was like, he thought he was a shit cook. Like he thought he was really bad at cooking. Well, he was okay cooking, but like it wasn't that interesting. But that was his task. That was his one thing to do for that year. And then another monk might be in charge of like, taking the people who come to the monastery to their room and showing and like explaining how the monastery works and all this stuff. And so like there was always one monk that was their task. So in some way, like felt like that person's like that was the custom that they had to do, kind of thing. Or not that they had to do it, but yeah, it felt like that. But overall, it was like this. There was this general hospitality, and that was pretty genuine. That like they wanted you to. Well, this is what I felt like, that they wanted you to experience, Christ or God, and be a part of their prayer and being close with God through prayer. So that felt pretty genuine. You okay, Toby?
Yeah.
Just sitting back. Okay, so then we kind of get to the I'm going in chronological order and also kind of jumping around a little bit, but I think I was keep on track.
Anyway, you like it.
Yeah. I honestly just want to share the experience and share the story. So
Yeah. Do whatever is right for you.
Yeah, but basically I kept walking, and the plan was to get to this one monastery called Dianasu. And then I arrived there pretty late, late-ish. And they've got this rule at the monasteries: if you arrive too late, like if it's a dark, like then they shut the gates and don't let anyone in. So you literally got to get there before it gets dark. Otherwise, you're on the street, and there's like literally nowhere to go. So it's So it's pretty important you get to the monastery on time. And I think that's like a general thing. Like they're very strict without like being strict with words. They're like strict with like, sometimes they're strict with words, but it was more or less with like hand gestures and what you can and can't do. And so I arrived at this monastery called Dianasu after like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hour walk or something. It's pretty hungry and and stuff. But like so I literally rocked up, and then the monks were like kind of already in the church, and they kind of like ushered me to like just leave all my stuff and come to the church, because it was like I got there and it was like no one. It's like deserted, and then I was like, oh, because the prayer started, right? And so this one monk was just like kind of hurrying me into the church, and I walked into this cathedral, church in the middle of the monastery. And first of all, like what I noticed was like it was super dark, super dark, and then they just got all these candles like lit in the church, and in the middle, most of the churches, and this one also had this like a ring of circle with like lots of candles, and then that's underneath like the main kind of church tower, you could call it, and that's where like the monks were. Yeah, they would pray and do their chanting and things like that. So so I just rocked up, and like I've got not much of an idea about what to do, so I just kind of like just like fuck, like this monk just kind of ushered me into the church, and then he's kind of like telling me to sit down, and I was just kind of trying to observe like what was going on to know what on earth. And they have these like funny chairs, like with like handles like this high, and then like a lower one, and that each chair has like 2 different heights that you can sit on. And so it's I was just already like, how do I even sit on this chair?
You can't even sit on the chair.
Can't
That's
even like work out how to sit on a chair. And then,
how foreign the experience is.
yeah, and then like I got there, and there's like people sitting next to me who were also like kind of on the pilgrimage. Then they were just like getting up and like doing the kind of, they do the it's like the
Sign of the cross. Yeah.
exactly, like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then they were doing that a lot, and I was just like, do I do that too? Like, what do I do? I'm like, I'm not Orthodox, but like, I don't know, like, so I was just sitting there like real confused, and at the same time just like pretty open to working out what was going on. And it whilst at the same time, like, there's these monks kind of like almost gliding around the church, so they're like walking, but you just see their silhouettes kind of just like moving around the church, and there's maybe like 20 or 30 of them, and I'm just like, this is super super foreign right now. And then in the background there's just like this kind of chanting going on, kind of like sounds like Tibetan in a way, or like kind of Asian, but
What does it sound like?
I don't know. Well, I can say like, but the one word that I could understand was like hallelujah, hallelujah, and they're like kind of talking really quickly, like chanting really quickly, and then when they do the prayer as well, when they're like reciting the prayers, like going very very quickly.
They gotta get there fast.
Yeah, and it's like,
God fast.
Gotta get to God fast. I think they just want to get as much in or something. So it's like, yeah, it kind of like sounded like yes.
Oh, they have his ear. They're trying to get it all out.
Yeah, but it was fascinating, because it was also like, it was kind of like this. No, yeah, it was kind of like this chanting, almost choir. Like there would be on one side of the church would be one monk chanting, and then on the other side he would stop, and like the other one would start and stuff, and like. And so there would be like this kind of like choir of monks chanting, and then at one time along that, then like they would all get up and kind of like do one song or one kind of pray together and stuff. Yeah, so here I was just kind of like, what's going on? And then like this other pilgrimage people like kind of sitting next to me. I was just observing like what to do from them. And then at one point, like they all got up and like they started walking behind the monks, and then they would like walk up to like Jesus Christ's kind of like painting or like another saint, and then do this, and then they would give like, they would like kiss the the saint or Jesus. And I was just like, okay, do I do that? Like, what am I didn't in the beginning, because I was just like, okay, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was just kind of like thrown into this kind of experience of like, it was very out there, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to open up to this, not really understanding what's going on, and not really being able to understand the language, because I was also speaking Greek, right? And at the same time, I was like, one thing I can understand, or can I get I get the feeling of what's going on, like the energy.
That's more important anyway, right? Because God is not Greek.
Yeah, God is definitely not Greek. It's beyond the Greeks.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, okay, I'll kind of tap into that, and when I started doing that, I started to experience that it wasn't that dark in the place. Like the people, and also the monks, they're all dressed in black too. Like this revelation came actually a few days later, but it's worthy of noting was that like in the beginning was it felt like dark, and it felt like the whole thing was dark, like the whole, like it was like a dark energy kind of thing, you could say. It was literally dark, like in there too, but like it was also kind of it was weird. And after some days, after some like hours of going to these prayers and things, and coming and looking and experiencing it from more of a energetic and feeling wise, I started to see, literally like see the light in these monks and see the light in the place, even though there was pitch black.
Wow.
And that was like, I don't know if it was like the light of God or what was going on, but that was definitely like a revelation and a shift in that experience. But yeah, I walked out of this church like, what the fuck just happened? Like, and then like immediately after the church stops, then like you go to like this eating hall, and then whilst like you sit down to eat, like you're not allowed to talk, and then they're reciting the prayers all throughout the time you talk, and then they ring a bell.
Damn.
Like they ring this bell, or like kind of tap this. They have this like kind of wooden thing that like they drum to signify like that it's time to eat, like eating time or time to go to church or whatever. And it's like super loud, so it doesn't matter like how deep you sleep, you're going to wake up to this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're in this eating hall, and then you're there, and they're kind of like ring this bell, and then you're like, okay, then you can sit down to eat, but no one's talking, so you're just kind of like, okay. And then I'd actually heard earlier on, like, you've got a set amount of time to eat, and once they ring the bell again, you're not allowed to eat anything else. So it's like, okay, I'm going to eat pretty quickly to make sure that I actually can have everything before. And it was actually true. Like there's about 10 minutes or so. They ring it. The elder or the father of the monastery rings a bell, and everyone just stops eating, and that's it. And you like stand up and then like wait to like for the elders to kind of come out of the eating hall first, and then as a visitor or as a pilgrim, then you like kind of go last. So it's like a hierarchy kind of vibe going on.
Yeah.
All right, Tobin, any questions? Hit me. I can keep going.
What was anything that you were not expecting to have going on in a monastery? Because of course it was a weird experience and there was a lot of things, but you were kind of expecting that. What happened, or did you see that you did not expect with the monks or the monastery? What surprised you?
In that monastery? Or
yeah.
in like, yeah. Well,
what was a funny thing that happened that you didn't expect?
I didn't expect this. I didn't expect one of the monks to. I had this like I was so like after the prayer and after the food, then you kind of go to your room, and then like most of the time like the night finishes there, and it's like 5 or 6 o'clock. So it's like, because that's when they sleep. They sleep from that time to about 11 and 12, and then they get up again and start praying.
Oh, okay.
So it's like kind of, yeah. Anyway, so I had this feeling to go and find out. Well, I think it was, I wasn't sure when the prayer would start the next day, or what I wasn't really sure what to do. And so I had this feeling to kind of just go and, yeah, into the monastery or like kind of go and ask somebody. So then I was just walking around trying to find a monk, and like everyone's asleep, so there was like no one around. But I didn't know that. Like I was just kind of like just rocked up. Like I didn't know the rhythm or anything like this. And then this one monk like kind of just approached me. Actually, I didn't approach him, and he just kind of, he was with like another pilgrim person, and he didn't speak any English. But he kind of just pointed at me. Then he was just like, kind of, come here kind of thing. I was like, all right. And then this other pilgrim guy is like, oh, he wants to ask you if you can help him like with the wood, like heating. Like each monastery has a different way of like heating the place and getting hot water and stuff. And that that monastery, that is all done by like this massive furnace.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. And so he was asking me like if I could help with that. I was like, yeah, I can help with that.
Oh yeah.
So we walked into this room. It was like full of like kind of embers and like it was full of kind of like the silt you get from like when you burn wood. It was like over the whole room, so it's just like super dusty and stuff. I get in there, and then like he wants me to help with these big logs that are like kind of super thick, which you can hardly carry. Like it's almost impossible with one person. But with two people, we can like just kind of lift them and then chuck them into the furnace. So he asked me to do that, and so I was like, all right. And then I was there with him and this other pilgrim, and then the conversation came out of that, right? And I think it came out of more or less because I was like helping with that, and then he was asked, and then he started asking questions about me and about like what I was doing there and what I do in general. And he asked, what I do for a living, and I said I'm a psychotherapist. And then he said, "Oh, like you're not too different than me." And I was like, "That." And then this other pilgrim was like really confused. He was like, "How on earth does that make any sense?" So he asked the monk, and the monk explained. And this is what they do in Greece. Like they every word, especially in English words, are like mostly derived from the Greek language. So then he takes like he goes, okay, psychotherapist, and he goes breaks it down. Okay, so this psycho part of that is like to be a like is like your soul or spirit or your mind, and then like the therapist part is like to a therapia. I think he said it was like in Greek, and then he's like to heal or to help or to kind of so he said like you're like a spirit healer or a spirit helper or something. And then he was like saying that that's kind of like the work that he does, so the work of God, and to heal spirit, like heal souls or heal spirits, the people who come and visit, right?
That's interesting.
And I found that I was like, okay, that's really really interesting. And I think more than that in itself, it was like just the energy of this monk and how he was, the way he was kind of like interacting, the way he was, maybe the presence of him, and the truth in like his presence, you could say, or the truth in
he had something of the essence.
Yeah, literally. And that's what I experienced in that conversation, and in every conversation actually with these monks, is like they have some of the source, some of the essence or the truth. And if you think about it, if you reflect on it and say, okay, well, if I reflect on it, it's like, okay, well, these monks are here like literally dedicating their life to prayer, to being close to God. And if you imagine spending, I don't know how much time they spend, I think they spend most of their day, but more or less actually in prayer, like 8-10 hours a day, just literally with the intention of being close to God through prayer. Like you're gonna, whatever way, whatever method you use, you're gonna there's gonna be something from that, right? There's gonna be some truth that you experience, and some like your spirituality is going to be deepened or heightened, however you want to look at it.
Working on one thing is very helpful, I've found, because it reveals more and more subtle layers, not necessarily of the thing, but of yourself.
Yeah.
So if you have a simple work and if you have a simple method, then what you really end up watching is yourself.
Yeah.
And then you go deeper. So it's kind of interesting that I think all spiritual work is, I think the work is pointless, but it's the dedication that makes the difference.
Yeah, it's kind of like the commitment or the dedication, and that's what you experience in these monks. They're like, well, it's funny, like you use the word they're religious, but they are religious, but they're also religious in the fact that they give their life to this purpose, and then they show up, like just every prayer they're there, every like to whatever task they're doing, then that's what they're doing for that year. Like they really, yeah, and it's in some way very basic and very like kind of going back in time. That's the feeling when you're there.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like it's this simplicity or this kind of like way of living, I guess you could say, that is so basic and yet so rich and yet so close to like the spiritual truth. And that's what that was like opened up more and more the longer I was there. And yeah.
How long do you think any one of them would keep that state if they were out in the world, in the bustling streets of Greece?
Well, some of them do go out. And some of these monks also, I think, get sent around the world to be priests at different Orthodox churches, because these monks are like, I mean, this like, and well, at this one monastery, one of the pilgrims said like, and he's like, I can't really say this, but he said like, we're in a very holy place. Like this is where like saints like live. Like, and he's like, I can't say that because I'm not like allowed to say that. But from his eyes, from going there every year, he was like, this is the pinnacle of like the religious, spiritual Greek Orthodox people in the world.
Interesting.
And that was like, okay, well, that's and that's how it's kind of treated in these monasteries. Like some of these monks are treated like saints and have like a pretty special, pretty significant like presence or aura about them.
You talked to me about, you said you weren't sure if what they call saints, if that was also a Buddha. But what was your sense? Did you think these guys were enlightened, or how did you feel when you were around them?
How did I feel? Well, it was interesting. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I didn't meet anyone that I would see as a saint. Because I think a saint is also like a pretty big word, and there had been saints like living there in Mount Athos. I'm not sure if they say there is right now, but like even 10, 20 years ago, there was a saint called Saint Pythias or Peleus, something like this. And he was a saint. He wasn't spiritually. How do you say that?
Realized, or like, was he canonized?
Was he what?
Was he canonized? Was he raised as a saint by the Pope or whatever?
I think so. Like they called him a saint. So
yeah,
and he was such a and that's the interesting thing about this place in Mount Athos, right? There's two ways of living there. You can live in a monastery with a bunch of monks, or you can live like pretty much alone in like isolated in a mountain or in a village. And this one saint who lived in the last 10, 20 years, he lived alone in what they call a cell, which is pretty much just like a hut in the mountain. And people would like kind of take a pilgrimage and go and see him, like go and visit him, and yeah, to be blessed and things like this. And one monk I spoke with said that he went and saw him and he touched his arm, and from that moment he could see everything in this person's past, this life and past lives, and he could see his future.
Wow.
And he said like he could do that with anyone. And so, and he from this monk's words, he said like he was at a spiritually elevated place where he was like in so in touch with like God, or in basically in the heavenly kind of realm, you could say, which I thought was interesting because it's different words for the. Is it the same? And that's one of my curiosity. Is it different words for the same thing? Like
In Buddhism, Tathagata,
or Nirvana,
enlightened one is said to be able to see the past, future, and present like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the same thing. But also, they don't really tell people about that stuff because that's not really a good thing to be talking to people about.
No. And that's what this one monk said. Now I'm jumping the gun, but I'll come to this. I think that was the most fascinating conversation. And I sat down with this monk on the last day for like a few hours and talked about spirituality and stuff and Buddhism.
We got 10 minutes left, so
10 minutes left.
Anything, yeah. So you got to get to the juiciest point.
Shit, really? 10 minutes?
We're 50 minutes in, baby.
Man, this is going okay.
Well, we can do another episode about it, but if there's anything juicy you wanna,
I think we can. I think we can jump to this. Yeah, so I was on the last day at this monastery, and I was like, I think at that point I'd spent like every morning from like 1 or 3 o'clock in the morning for hours praying and stuff. And I was just like, I had all these questions. I was like, I didn't really kind of get all the praying, and I didn't really kind of, I had more questions than I came there with, right? And I was like, I got to ask some of these to one of the monks, like who lives here and experiences this every day. And so I was in the gift shop, and then there was this monk sitting there, and he seemed pretty open and stuff. And I just asked him. I said, like, straight up, just like, why do you pray? And then
that's a Zen question. You posed a Zen question to him.
Yeah, I wanted to go just straight to and that opened up a very long dialogue for a couple of hours, and we ended up getting a chair and like sitting with him, and he was quite open to talking about Orthodox religion and his perspective and things like this. He's the one who talked about this saint who he visited, and where do we go in this conversation? Okay, so firstly, I asked him also, what when you do this, like, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you? And I think that kind of opened up actually like a clarity from my perspective with Christianity that I didn't see for all my life before then. And because up to then, I thought maybe like this is silly to say, but I thought that when you go to church and then you pray to Jesus, or you look at Jesus, you're praying to like this figure of Jesus Christ himself, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I thought that, and then I realized it's not exactly that. And that's after this conversation, because he explained, okay, this is, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Okay, and I said, like, what is the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit?
Yeah.
And he basically said it's all God in different parts of God, the creation of God, the living of God, the God and everything, and then I was like, oh, okay, like. And what I discovered in that conversation is that it's not just that they're praying to Jesus Christ; they're praying to the godliness in Jesus Christ. They're praying to the God, like the godness in that. And so it's like it's not the actual figure of they're praying to him because he is godly, because he was sent down from the heavens, or. And so that's helping them come close to God, and that's what he opened up about. Like, why do they pray? And they pray like to be close to God. Like, so
they're less praying to Jesus, but they're more using him as a bridge to God.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a middleman.
Yeah,
for godliness or whatever.
That's how it seemed anyway. I can't say that that's the super fact or anything, but that for me was just like a bit of like a revelation in a way of and like an opening to like, okay, like so it's actually just this figure that there's more to this. There's this, and I think that's in more or less like the experience was that these monks are like going to the source of the link from this world to God.
Right.
And the way to get there is through prayer for them.
Through Jesus.
Through Jesus, through chanting, through praying that the saints come there and guide them. And then he kind of started this, and I asked him like what advice would he give for someone who is wanting to find out more about Orthodox or about Christianity. And his words was
find the path where you are.
What's that?
Find the path where you are.
Yeah, and his words was actually experience that God is true first, and ask him through prayer to show you the path. Pray to him to guide you for the path or the trail or whatever you want to call it. And I was like, wow, that's some powerful stuff. And then I was like, what about if you know that God is true? What about if you're aware of that? And he wouldn't really, he kind of kept coming back to that. And then he was also like, pray for other people, but never pray for yourself. And he talked about something interesting was, when in Buddhism, like you meditate and like, well, you do a lot of other things, but like it's a lot about like working with the mind and things like this. And in Christianity, as he explained it, it was like you can control your passions. And I was like, what on earth are passions? And from his words, is like passions are your literally your thoughts, just any thoughts, your desires, your greed, your wanting more women, or all this kind of stuff. And so like
only crazy people want more women. I'm just gonna say that. One is enough, thank you.
One is
more than enough.
Yeah, so that was interesting, and he said also like with the women thing, because there's no women there, right? So like they also, when they become monks, they renounce all relationships to anyone for their life, and he said it in his words was like they do that and they fast and they do these things not to show off, or not to show like that they do it to show like the brothers of the world that is possible, that you can do that. There is a path in that direction if you want it. Yeah. And that's what he said to me, because he kept looking at me and he's kept like going, why are you asking all these questions? And then he kind of said to me like, if you want this life, the life of the monk life, or this path, then you really got to, if you really want it, then you ask for it. But you kind of be careful, because if you ask for it and God answers, then you have this, and then you get this feeling that he said, and he said when you get this feeling, then you're called upon.
Yeah.
And he said 99% of the monks that live there get this feeling, and then within a few years they renounce their life in society and become monks. Yeah. So I was like, okay, gotta be careful with that one.
It's easy to be enlightened on the mountain.
Yeah, and that's what I didn't experience enlightenment on this trip, Caravan, or everyone listening, but I did experience the closest I've ever been to the idea of God, or like, and the closest I've ever felt like the presence of the Holy, like the Holy Spirit. And there was this one moment when I was super in my like kind of this space of like searching, I guess you could say, and I stumbled across. Well, I was actually pointed in this direction from a monk to go to this cave built into the mountain where the first monk who came to Mount Athos lived when he arrived there. And it's literally just like this tiny little building, literally a cave in the mountaintop. And I got there, and there's just one chair, and then you just kind of crawl up into this cave thing. I was like, fuck, like this is how he was like living. And I sat there and I was just like asking this question of like, okay, if God is there, like where are you? If God is true, if you are true, like reveal yourself. And I kept kind of like searching and just opening myself to this, and I did like a prayer there, or like a meditation kind of thing, and I tapped into like an energetic state, you could say. And I'm not sure exactly what happened in that moment, but I tell you what, like it did seem like the presence of God Himself was there in front of me, and it was almost like you could see it in that cave structure itself, like something, a face or something, and in that moment, it was kind of like something, kind of this energy walking towards me, and it's hard not to shy away from that experience. It's hard not to say that that's not something. I don't know if that's God or what it is, or if it's a saint coming there, or if it's a spirit, or what it is. But that to me was some proof of the path and some proof of God is true, like this monk was suggesting to find first.
And the only last question that you have to answer, Jonathan, is, so does that mean, are you going to become a monk?
An Orthodox monk? Well, I would say no for now, because
no for now.
I've got my responsibilities as a father to children, not to the Lord. But I did consider being christened after that experience, actually. And I'm not sure about that either. So that was my experience of the pilgrimage in Mount Athos.
Wow.
And,
what a trip.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll come back to some more things in our next episode, when other things come up. Maybe you'll be reminded of the things that we didn't have time to this time around.
Yeah, but I think I want to leave on the note of there was a layer in that, a spiritual layer that I've experienced in that trip being deepened or heightened, whatever you want to look at it through.
That's awesome.
And that was clear in a way that that was very clear. And
that's why you went in the first place.
That's why I went, and it's just so crazy, because then I'm back into day-to-day life now. And it's just like, that's just not that present.
That's the next episode. The next episode, we talk about what's it like to be back in what's it like to come down from the mountain, from the mountain.
Yeah. Maybe we're going to bring the mountain here, bring the mountain to the everyday.
What do you think we're doing, Jonathan? What do you think this is all about?
We're doing that now, and I'm just like, we need to like do, not we need to, but like I would love to create a space, like a kind of like a temple space or something, or like a monastery of kind where people can congregate and
I say that no one is further from God than people who go apart from His world to find Him. So I don't put much esteem in these monks, but let's find peace in the marketplace instead.
Peace in the marketplace, and at the same time, it's like sometimes experiencing these monks and that way of living in life does open up a spiritual channel, and it did for me.
True.
In more ways in Christianity than I've experienced in my life. And I've been to Jerusalem. I've been to some of the holiest other places in the world as well. So this is something different. Yeah.
Maybe I
was just ready for it in another way. I don't know.
Maybe I'll go one day and see these people for myself.
I think you got to go in and find find something. Find what you, if that's what you're called upon.
Yeah.
But that's me sharing the Mount Athos trip. So if you're inspired to go and you're a guy, I completely recommend going or finding your own pilgrimage with your own religion or own spiritual path. And
if you're a woman, don't let shit like that stop you. Just break in and make them.
Break in or find another pilgrimage. So there's plenty of them around.
Make them recognize you.
I think the thing with the pilgrimage is walking the path. That's literally what it is, walking the trail.
Yeah.
And I really hope, and I think we hope, that you walk that path and find your trail. And I think that's a big part of this podcast and this kind of thing we're doing is kind of guiding people on that path, at least to find it and then to walk it. And there's other people on that who you can call upon and be with in that space. So,
and if you want a sign, if you want to know that God is true or the path is true or whatever, you can just ask for it or pray for it. It will always come, and then you will know. But then you have to trust it when you do.
Yeah. Yeah, and not all of us is ready for that. It's amazing what happens when you ask for things. It is actually remarkable.
You get them.
Without asking, without expecting it to be there.
Yeah, you get it if you expect it too. Ask and you shall receive.
Ask and you shall receive.
That's in the Bible, baby.
That is in the Bible, baby.
All right, Jonathan.
Amen. Yeah.
I guess we'll see. Yeah.
We'll see you on the trail.
We'll see you on your path or on the trail.
Yeah.